Okay, Mr. Mayor, we are now live. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any member who would like to add anything to our agenda here today? Peter?
I just want to ask something at the end about the firm we've hired to do the bylaw with the weekend take field calls and stuff.
Okay, do you we could add that on later?
Yeah, wherever you see to put it in would be fine. I just have a question about it.
Okay, no problem. If there's no added to our agenda, I'll lead the recommendation that the agenda be approved of the Senate. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. Show of hands, all in favor? It's carried. Declaration of opportunity and interest. You can clear anytime you see fit during the meeting. Minutes of the previous minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the Police Service Board meeting held on June 8th, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Barry, second by Peter. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, the show of hands, all in favor? It's carried. Makes it a lot easier. Move right along when there's only 2 members to vote. Delegations, we have none. Public question period to Madam Clerk. Was there any questions come in from the public? Seeing none. Reports and recommendations. We're down to Commander Anderson's report, and I have a recommendation here that the detachment commander report covering June 1st, 2021 to July 31st, 2021 be received for information. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. Now I'll turn it over to Commander Anderson. Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to say that we've been working away at upgrading our Police Service Board report, and the next report that you see will be a different formatting and I feel more accurate information on the report because of where we're retrieving our data. So I just wanted to mention that to everybody. But for today, I'm on page 3 of the report regarding the Grey Bruce Auxiliary Unit for June and July. So we now have 12 active members out of 17 spots for our auxiliary members. We've just hired 2 new members. They are they've graduated and they're now active within our detachment. So that's great news, but we still have 5 spots available. So if anybody knows of anyone that wishes to apply for and become an auxiliary member with us, to please pass that along. With the relaxing of the provincial restrictions, 148.5 hours were volunteered by our auxiliary unit members for the month of June, and 25.5 hours were dedicated to the Speed Spy in the month of June. So we have trained our auxiliary members in the administration and setting up of our Speed Spy units. This saves having to take officers off the road to be able to go set that up and report back on that. So we're happy to have them help out.
Deborah, may I ask a question, please?
Sure.
On the Speed Spy, can you explain exactly how that works?
So it's more of a covert unit that retrieves data collection. So it'll count the number of cars and it'll record the speed, and it'll put it out in, so it has to be set up, and usually it's solar powered. And once it's taken down, we download the information and it gives us a report on the whether or not there's an issue with speeding, what time of day is the worst time of day for the speeding, or it may show that there isn't an issue at all. So that's sort of how it works.
What I was wondering, Deborah, is that I've noticed in various spots throughout Georgian Bless, I noticed certain things tied to hydro poles and stuff like that. Is this what you're referring to?
Sometimes it's put on hydro poles or signs, whatever the best location is that'll capture the data.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like it works like on a radar, so it has to, be facing the traffic and in order to record it. So.
Yeah, okay. Because I've been telling everybody that it'll take a picture of your car and your license number, and you'll be getting a ticket in the mail.
Yeah, it doesn't do that.
Oh.
Yeah, but if people think that and it slows them down, I don't know. Yeah, that's more of the photo radar type situation. This is just downloads the data. It doesn't give any data on the like the registration for the vehicle or who the registered owner is. It's just simply basically advising us if there is a speeding problem, what time of day, so we can concentrate our patrols based on the data.
Okay, thank you for that.
No worries.
Will that work if you put them like where a stop sign is? Say a corner where they're doing a rolling stop all the time, but it gives you that information and stuff?
No, it's strictly in relation to speed.
Just for speed, okay. Okay.
Auxiliary unit members have also been assisting with marine patrols. So we are mandated to have marine patrols out from May 24th weekend to Labor Day weekend. We do have to staff it with 2 officers. So when the auxiliaries are available to come out and lend a hand with that, we can free up another officer to take calls for service. So they've been helping out with marine patrols throughout the summer. I just wanted to point out that Sergeant Kathy Brown from our auxiliary unit is retiring this year. She served 20 years on our auxiliary unit, which is quite impressive. This is all volunteer service, and she volunteers her time to go get her annual training and all of that. So she's going to be retiring, and we will have a small ceremony at detachment for her, along with other service awards that are going to be awarded to our members at detachment. Due to COVID, unfortunately, we can't have members of the public taking part in that, but she will be recognized by our detachment. Page 4 is our crime unit report. For the month of June, we had 40 benchmark occurrences, and of course, these are all the more complicated, serious crimes that have to be overseen due to adequacy standards by qualified crime members. Also for the month of July, we had 29 benchmark occurrences, and our crime unit continues to follow up leads, prepare for court, and continue to investigate 3 current homicides investigations that we have on the go, and 1 attempt murder, and also 1 found remains that we're working with Hamilton Police on to solve that crime. These are usually occurrences that take a lot of resources and a lot of dedicated time to investigate. And that's why it's taken over by crime rather than dealt with by the frontline members. Our community street crime unit has been very busy. They executed, during this report period, they executed a search warrant for an indoor and outdoor cannabis marijuana grow. It included resources from our TRUE unit, ERT unit, K9, aviation, several neighboring street crime units attended to assist. They also dealt with hydro, municipal bylaw, fire and building inspectors, and the total value of the property seized is approximately just over $12 million. And that's a very significant yield from a warrant. And there's no doubt in my mind that that product would have found its way to all the communities in the area, including Georgian Bluffs. We also, our street crime unit assisted Huron First Street Crime Unit. They assisted us with executing a warrant on Northern Bruce Peninsula. Very disturbing to learn that seized was 20-edged weapons, a compound bow with arrows, and several rounds of ammunition. So again, those weapons are now across an incident. In this particular case, a motor vehicle collision, but due to the the skills of the officer that attended what seemed to be just a motor vehicle collision. They seized weapons and drugs, including cocaine, magic mushrooms, as well as 4 airsoft pistols, airsoft rifle, a loaded handgun. The street value of the drugs was over $23,000, and the value of the property was approximately $4,500. And again, this product, no doubt, would have found its way to all the communities in Grey Bruce.
Question.
Barry, go ahead.
Are we having a real increase in drugs in the area and trafficking?
I don't believe that there's an increase. I think that it's just projects that, you know, it takes several months to investigate these things, and they're just coming to conclusion now. I don't believe there's been an increase, although there are reports through the media that there does seem to be an increase in drug, alcohol use, and mental health issues due to COVID.
Okay, Barry?
Yeah, I just wondering, like, it seems like, you know, there's, or people are reporting, or there's been stopped in traffic stops and seizing more drugs. And I think, I just think it's, to me, that there seems to be more of it floating around than there was before in the last couple of years.
Well, I think that the Police Service Board reports are now including more information for you to be aware of than just the usual statistical numbers that we provided in the past. Perhaps that is bringing it to the forefront. But I mean, I could have our analysts take a look at the previous years to see if there is an increase in drug charges in the last, I don't know, 3 years or so, if that's what the board wishes.
Yeah, I just don't like, there's a lot of areas, even up here where I am now, that a lot of commercial growing units, like down by Little Pike Bay, there's 2 units there, and they're just, you know, you drive by and the both of them are, you know, and that wasn't there 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm just wondering, you know, it's.
Well, the cannabis is legal now with permits. Yeah. So, you know, that is, although there are, usually there's a number attached to how many plants that particular grow can have. And sometimes we're getting people that are running that are producing more than what they're allowed. And that's something that we try to keep on top of. Similar to the one that we did that I was talking about, that there was over $12 million worth of product there. So we do try to keep on top of those, but they are lengthy investigations, and they sometimes takes months to get to the point where you get a warrant, and sometimes you don't get to the point where you get a warrant. So, you know, we are trying to keep on top of it for sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Deborah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't know if I pointed it out, but our street crime unit sergeant, Jamie Blair, is now acting staff sergeant in charge of West Region street crime units. And in his place, we have acting detective sergeant Jeff Dudley, who used to be on the unit up here. He is very talented and has a lot of experience in this case, and he's doing a great job leading our street crime unit currently. On page 6, just showing you that, you know, our street crime unit sometimes goes outside of our detachment area to assist other street crime units when they have warrants and are doing investigations. But in return, of course, Grey Bruce also does get help from them in return. So it's they move around where they're needed, and they've got great results. On page 7, unless there's any questions so far, is our school resource officer in community services. And although Nick Wilson is a school resource officer for Grey Highlands, he is also a community services officer for the whole detachment. And so I'd like to include in all our board reports his breakdown of what he's been spending his time doing. He is also our part-time media officer. You've probably seen his name in the media lately. And he is also our situation table qualified officer. So you are probably aware of situation tables, where if a member of the public comes to our attention or the attention of other social services and are in imminent need of an intervention of some sort, one of the agencies can bring this and call the situation table together and determine the best course of action to get that person some help. And so Nick has been trained in that and has taken part in a couple of situation tables since he's been trained up. Since the schools are closed in the summer months, Nick has been going out on our bike patrols, and he's been out there with our Staff Sergeant Karen Ashmore, and it's been a big hit in the communities, and they spend a lot of time interacting with the public and also doing enforcement on the bike patrols. Nick also does presentations. He's held fraud presentations for seniors groups throughout Grey Bruce, and also attended councils on Aging Grey Bruce meetings. And he also does enforcement as well. He was out on Highway 6 enforcing speeding and aggressive driving. So he's a little bit more time in the summer for more proactive work when he's not in the schools. Page 10, court case management in our part-time unit. That just goes through the bails and warrant-related incidents through June and July, and also the number of criminal informations that have been prepared and sworn to laying charges. So 90 of them in July and 43 informations in June. The transition to e-ticketing has been completed, and it has really streamlined the ticketing process for Highway Traffic Act offenses. And we are still conducting bails at detachment rather than court because of COVID. And it's actually, I find, more efficient than having to transport the prisoner to court and having to wait until they are in front of a justice of the peace. Our part-time unit, as you now know, we have 4 part-time members that look after serving summonses and subpoenas and doing fingerprints. These are all duties that our frontline members before had to be taken off the road to complete. So they assist with that, so that allows our members to continue to be on the road and answer calls for service and do proactive work. Our media. So to date, we've had 170 media releases, and there's some highlights there of the type of media releases that we do, unless anybody has any questions. Sorry, year to date is 193 at the end of July.
Questions, Deborah?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Page 14, again, it's just a how-to if you'd like to follow Grey Bruce OPP through social media and get our media releases on real time. Just a how-to for each of the members if they wanted to partake in that. Page 15, under action plan, it just gives the year-to-date hours in the different areas such as ride, foot patrol, impaired by drugs, COVID-related occurrences, and calls for service. There's a little caveat at the bottom of 15, as I was explaining earlier, that we're revamping the way we do our police service board reports. We had previously gotten our information from what's called BI Cube, and we found that that information is not always up to date. Eventually it will be, but at the time of our reports, depending on when the Police Service Board meeting was, it wasn't completely up to date, and therefore we're changing on where we're gathering our information from. We're going to start gathering it from our niche or record management system. Part of the issue with is our mapping, and we are now able to isolate Georgian Bluffs numbers as opposed to being in the area. Georgian Bluffs and Chatsworth and Markdale were all under the same coding, so the numbers will be slightly lower, I think, in the future because we're isolating Georgian Bluffs numbers. This is just for our reporting numbers, not for the billing numbers. So I just wanted to make that clear to the board. I think that the next report around, we will have a comparison of the previous 5 years so that the board can see the numbers and how they're progressing to year to date. And the remainder of the report is your weighted hours. And that would be my report, Mr. Chair, unless anybody has any further questions.
Thank you, Deborah. I have a question sort of related to your report, mainly related to you as the commander of OPP. There's been a bit of time gone by since both police detachments were amalgamated together. Had most of the headaches and little quirks and so on all disappeared now, and now everybody's all together, or how's that going?
I think we're definitely more efficient, and we have more flexibility in our response to calls for service. Although the detachments helped each other out unofficially in the past, I think it's more standardized now. I think there's still a few growing pains, and one of the more recent ones is when you have two separate detachments, they have map coding that we have too many numbers now, and we need to sort of narrow that down to one detachment. And Acting Staff Sergeant Heels is looking into that for us, so we're hoping to get that sorted out. But really, it's just all administrative. I think that you know, the detachment as a whole, I went through an amalgamation previously with Wellington County, where 3 municipal services amalgamated into one single contract for the county. And in my opinion, it takes a good 5 years to have that turnover and way of doing things before, you know, everything really gels to their full potential. So I think there's still room to improve, but we're still working away at it.
No, that's good. I'm just curious. The question that had been asked to me, and I said I would ask the question here today, and thanks very much for that answer. The other question I have before I go to the board, Deborah, is that the opioid crisis in Grey Bruce areas, do you find that it seems to be getting worse, or we're holding our own, or how's it happening?
I mean, I think that issue is always going to be there. It's a real difficult one to manage, and certainly can't be managed with enforcement alone. It has to be in cooperation. I would just say that any overdoses that we must have a parallel investigation by street crime to try to determine who the supplier is. And we have been successful in the past with not prosecuting, but charging those suppliers. So we do look at it that end as well. But if the board wishes, I can certainly take a look and have our analysts do up a report for our next meeting that will take a look to see if we are actually experiencing an increase in those types of like opioid usage as opposed to previous years.
I'd like to see that, Deborah, but again, I know you have many other more important issues to be dealing with, but it sure would be nice to have information on that.
Sure, I'll see what I can do with our analyst, and they take a look at that for us, and they'll produce a report for me that I can bring back to the board.
Thank you, Deborah. The board have any questions? Oh, sorry, Deborah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring something to the board's attention and for their direction. Over the past few weeks, I have received a couple of emails regarding traffic complaints in Georgian Bluffs. And I have assigned officers to address those issues and report back to me on them. And I found that there really wasn't an issue for at least the times when my officers were there. I'm wondering, there's another township that has adopted this process, and I wanted to put it to the board to get their thoughts and direction on. But the township I was that we've sort of worked this out before was they produced a form that's posted on the township's website for traffic complaints. So a citizen who has a traffic complaint could go onto the township's website, fill out the form and explain what the issues are. Perhaps they have a specific time of day, maybe morning rush hour, evening rush hour. And from that form, the report is given to the police. Then it's given by the township. They put up the speed spy sign. And then they download the data after about a week. And if the data supports enforcement, then they give it over to us. If it doesn't support enforcement, it ends there. And I'm just wondering what the township or what the board feels with respect to that sort of process.
Thank you, Deborah. Before I turn over the board, I want to turn it over to staff. Al, with your staff, how do you think this will impact staff as a whole, like to be able to do something like this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, I'm hesitant to comment because I just don't know enough about it. Deborah, if you could send us a little more detail. I mean, I think anything that's going to provide an avenue for our residents to have sort of a dashboard or an ability to report on speeding, or, you know, when you talk about traffic, you're talking specifically about speeding. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it could be, for instance, intersection related, where people are seeing numerous cars failing to stop at a stop sign or traffic light or crosswalk. It could be along those lines as well. It's just a way of tracking it for one. In particular, like, you know, to send two officers, you know, oftentimes I have to say that sometimes it's the citizen's perception that there's an issue, but when in fact either the speed spy is put up and it sort of debunks that perception. I just feel like not that the officers, or I wouldn't want to have our officers respond, but I think that if it is just the person's perception, then you have two officers tied up in an area where they could be more useful if there isn't really an issue.
So then, Mr. Mayor, if the idea is, and I'll get some information from Deborah to better truth this out, but if the idea is that the township can sort of serve as sort of a repository for all of these complaints coming in, and then we can send them to Deborah to then act upon, versus, you know, the OPP having to go out on a one-off type of issue if it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say we don't want to be the avenue that justifies or warrants the calling out of the OPP, but I think there's value in having a repository for residents to sort of lodge their issues, and then we could sort of have a validation session with Deborah, who can then make the determination whether it warrants sending some people out or putting the speed spy or whatever that is out there. I think there's value in it for sure, and we can certainly set something up on our website if that's the desire, for sure.
And thanks for that, Alan. And before I go to Barry, Deborah, one thing we found, at least I found sitting on Grey County Council, there seems to be a tremendous push to reduce speed limits all over the place throughout Grey County. Some are justified, some aren't. And I'm a firm believer, unless you can tell me differently, by reducing the speed limit does not make it safer in some areas. Yes, a lot of areas it does, but it's roads in Grey County, for instance, are made to move traffic. That's the main concern, and safety. But I'm just concerned with reducing speed limits all over the place. Is that really a good justification of a speed limit sign?
Well, personally, and you know, there's traffic experts out there, and I stand to be corrected, but if you have trouble enforcing a 50 km/h zone, I don't know what the difference is of trying to enforce a 40 km/h zone. If people are going to speed at, over 50, they're certainly going to speed over 40. So, and I have noticed that quite a few areas have gone from a 50 to a 40 km/h zone. So I would have to, just take a look at the experts in that regard, and I can certainly make some inquiries about that. But from a policing aspect of it, I don't see it making a lot of difference. But that's just my take on it from a policing standpoint.
No, and I can appreciate that, and I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. It's a perception of a person, of somebody going by, that they're speeding, and they very well might not be, but in their mind they are. So that's very hard to deal with.
Sure, and one of the things I wanted to mention too, I know that Grey County has a speed display sign. So, one of the steps before the enforcement part of it could be, if somebody brings to the township's attention of an issue with speeding, we could start by a week or even 2 weeks with the speed display sign requested for that particular area, and then perhaps the speed spy if it's warranted, and then enforcement. It's more of an educational approach first, and enforcement if required.
Thank you, Deborah. Barry, go ahead, Mr. Hatt.
Yes, just a question about this complaint or forward to the website. What happens if I complain about speeding in a certain area and people go out and find, no, this guy's smoking dope or something, because there's been no, it's not happening. Do you get back to me with a letter or with the township saying that, no, we investigated it and we found nothing? And
Well, sorry.
So what happens is, to say you don't, that puts a big onus, I think, on the police force, because people are going to say, oh, well, these guys, we complain, but they never do nothing. And they give us a bad name to the police.
Deborah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I absolutely agree with you. There has to be a report back mechanism so that people understand that we, did take their complaint seriously and did put some resources towards it. But I think that that's where the speed spy comes in. So if somebody's perception is that there's an issue of speeding on a particular road, and we put the speed spy up, and after a week, in fact, the data shows that there doesn't seem to be a problem with speeding in that area, or there's a problem we can narrow down to, an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon, we can target that specifically and be more effective than randomly picking a time of day to go and do enforcement in that particular area. So if it got to the point where there was a complaint, we put up the speed display sign, and then we do the speed spy sign, and it did in fact show that enforcement was required. And I sent that information's related to me. I assign officers a focused patrol for that area, and the results of that focused patrol would definitely be reported back to the township. Whether you want it to be at a police service board meeting or whether you want it to be somebody specific at the township so that they can relate that to the person.
So who relates back to person, the municipality or youth people?
I do not believe that it'll be the responsibility of the township to report back to ratepayer that no, they weren't speeding, so on. I really think that's in the OPP's lane to do things like that. Deborah, am I wrong? Or-
Well, it could be, we could set it up whatever way you wish, Mr. Chair. It could be in the form of, like I said, a part of the Police Service Board report, focus patrol, speeding, whatever area, X number of hours spent, number of officers assigned, and the results were whatever that might be, because that's then a public document, right? But if you wanted to be more specific to the person, I think that could get labor intensive, but if you would prefer it to be a one-off, then that's something that could be considered.
Al, comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to mention that this is something that public sector organizations are sort of struggling with. Is we seem to be doing a great job of the intake in terms of complaints and things of that sort, but the ratepayers are then feeling that they're either being ignored or left out or whatever it is, because we don't do a good job of getting back to the ratepayer. And that's the $1 million question. And there's a lot of software companies out there actively right now working on solutions for this. So for example, if resident A were to put in a complaint that there's a stop sign that are continually rolling through, that would generate a work order. The resident would have to sign something in advance saying that they allow us to communicate with them. They'd have to give us their cell phone number, their email address, whether they want to be communicated with text or email. And then we would say, okay, your work order has been generated. Here's the work order. It's gone to the OPP. The OPP's looked at it, and then we close off the loop so that resident A doesn't feel that they've been ignored. But it's a significant investment for the township and for any public sector institution to purchase the software, implement it, and then get all the freedom of information or sort of the privacy concerns out of the way as well. So it seems simple enough, but it's a very complicated issue that public sector organizations are working with right now in terms of how to close that customer service loop. As I said, we do a great job of intake. We don't do a good job of closing the loop on the back end to say your issue has been investigated and now this is how it was resolved, or we couldn't resolve it because of the following issue. And so that's the one issue we're struggling with right now.
Thanks, Al. Comment, Deborah?
Yeah, I would agree that the report back is important. Otherwise, what's the point, right? So I believe that on the form for a traffic complaint, there could be a mechanism to put, do you wish to hear back on the results? And if so, please provide your contact information, whether it be email and your preferred way of contacting you. Something to that effect, but I'm just putting that out there, but just something to consider.
Thank you, Deborah. And to answer your question, with the direction of the board, we'll let Jordan West CAO, Alan Manassas, and Deborah Anderson, the OPP commander, communicate on this issue and see if they can bring something back to the board, maybe with something that we can support. Madam Clerk, I see you are on the screen, so the floor is yours.
I don't have any comment, no.
No, what would you think of that, Deborah and Al, if maybe you two should have a few conversations first to get more information on what Deborah is suggesting, and then maybe bring that back to the board?
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Deborah. I agree, Mr. Mayor. We can certainly explore it further in terms of, we understand the issue. I understand that there's a desire from the board to try to improve sort of the customer service and try to get back to people who have issued expressed some concerns, and we'll figure out a way to do it in a way that's cost effective, not a huge burden on either the OPP or on the municipality, but try to better communicate and close the loop for individuals who submit some issues, and to generally give a broader report back to the public as well.
Okay, thank you, Al. Madam Clerk, refresh my memory. When is our next Police Service Board meeting? As a call to chair, or we do have a specific date?
October. 12th.
Okay, so I think I seen a smile on both your faces, so you know what I'm referring to. So you guys can work that out amongst yourselves. Okay? Peter, do you have a question or a comment? You're muted, Peter.
Hear me?
I hear you now, Peter. Yes, go ahead.
Deborah, you said this was working successfully with another municipality.
Yes.
How long has it been running approximately? Is it just relatively new?
No, it's been well over a year anyway, and Meaford is the other township.
Well, I was going to say, you don't have to tell us who it is, but maybe Georgian Bluffs could speak to Meaford and get some ideas on how it, what roads to go down and what roads are, not worth exploring with it. Just to get some feedback from them.
And if I could just mention that currently what we have in place is I'll get an email from somebody, whether it be Brittany or others at the township, saying that we've had a complaint about speeding, at this location. Sometimes it includes the complainant's name, sometimes it doesn't. And whether they get a report back or not, I don't know. That's currently, there's not really a process in place, but it's just the, flow of information. So I think that it might be a bit of an improvement on the service delivery for sure.
Yes, and I agree, Deborah, because not many times, but a few times I get complaints coming through to me through email. And what I do, I'll either send it to you, Deborah, or I'll send it through our clerk or CAO to respond back to you from the Police Service Board. So it's a good process. In that case, those people are always get some kind of communication back saying what happened. So it's been good that way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any other questions from the board?
No.
Madam Clerk, is there anything from the Clerk's Department? You're scaring me. Okay, there's no other business, and did we vote on the motion? I do not believe we did. Thank you, Deborah, for a great report. And I must say that you and the sergeant are very good at your jobs.
Thank you very much for those words. I'll pass that along to Karen as well.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion before us, a show of hands, please. The motion is carried. So moving on with our agenda, we're down to unfinished business. We have none. We have a new business. Peter, you wanted to ask a question on the JSS.
Yes, is that the name of the firm that is it's a trial basis, right? Like it's an exploratory thing. And it's primarily to handle calls on the holidays and weekends and after hour when they can't get through to the township. Am I correct?
Why don't I let Al or Brittany give a overview of what the service that we hired for them, what they're doing for the township.
Sure. I just put a little more information. I just was curious about one thing, that if something as simple as a noise complaint, let's say it was on a weekend and the person calls this number and gets the extension, the message gets through. Is it this firm that does the investigation, or would they make a determination and say, it's a serious noise complaint, we have to bring the OPP in? Or I'm just curious, at what point would Deborah's crew be involved versus just being handled by this party? I'm not quite sure.
I'm going to turn it over to either Al or Brittany to give us an overview of this service. So you two pick which one would like to do it.
I'll start, Mr. Mayor, then Brittany will correct my errors, I'm sure. So council gave us the okay to start with a pilot project. So JSS has been providing bylaw services to neighboring municipality. And what we decided was we were getting a lot of complaints on weekends in terms of off-road vehicles going into places that they weren't allowed, the various parking issues around some of the sightseeing, different things. And so what we thought was it would be advantageous for the township to hire this firm on a pilot basis. So I believe they were hired from, I want to say July 1st to October October-ish. Okay, Brittany's saying yes. And what they're going to do is, so they're working Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. If there's any complaints that come in, they will go address them. They are going to give us all of the data so that council can then make an informed decision at the end of the pilot project, whether this is something that we want to entertain on a seasonal basis or a year-round basis. We currently have 2 bylaw officers that sort of don't do it on a full-time basis. They're also our building officials as well, so they're wearing multiple hats. And what we found was to try to alleviate all of the calls and the volume and the bandwidth that we currently having. This firm is going out Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. They're logging everything. They're responding to it. They're fully delegated authority. Council's passed a bylaw giving them the authority to act as our bylaw officers, so they can actually issue tickets and everything else. If they find something that warrants, they certainly have the authority to call the OPP and call them in and do all of that. But to me, the real value is going to be at the end of the pilot project, where they will give us the summary of all the calls they attended, the types of calls they attended, some of the issues that they encountered, so that council can then make an informed decision at the end of that pilot project onto the future of our bylaw enforcement services.
That's good. That's what I was hoping to hear, something like that, because I wasn't quite sure how it all, it seemed new to me, and it seems like a good idea. I can only imagine the amount of phone calls that must fly in at different points of time up there and things that people want dealt with yesterday.
Deborah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering what hours they work on the weekends.
Brittany?
So effective Friday, they are on call 12 p.m. through to 12 a.m. That is applicable to all holidays as well. And as Al mentioned, they started July 1st and will continue this pilot project through to October 31st of this year.
Okay, thank you for that. I was just wondering for my road sergeants, so that they're aware that they're out there, if we could maybe have either an email or something like that with contact information of the officers. Absolutely, if they run into difficulties and feel that their safety is a concern, that they absolutely should call the OPP and we can back them up. It's no different than South Bruce Peninsula also has that bylaw enforcement. I'm just a little bit concerned about the noise complaints because noise complaints, unlike parking complaints, in my experience, usually, not always, but usually the people that are offending have been drinking and, you know, give our officers a hard time, never mind bylaw officers. That's a little bit concerning, as well as a noise complaint can be a bylaw infraction, but also, depending on the circumstances, can jump up to a public mischief criminal charge as well. So I think that you're right, at the end of the pilot, that's something that you might want to take a look at as well. But like I said, if they run into any difficulties, they should just be calling us. But I would even perhaps arrange a meeting between your bylaw enforcement. Is this James Services or is it the same? Oh, okay, we've met with them before. They know they can call us. So, so yeah, if we could just have the details on it, the times that they'll be working and things like that, so I can pass it on to my road sergeants, that would be great.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate that. It's a great service that council want to implement, and it's great. Will be great to see all the data coming through towards the end of this trial error, so council can take a real good look at it, see what we want to do with it in the future. And I think what I hear, it's been working out fantastic. Madam Clerk, go ahead.
Thank you. If I can, I just wanted to note, so far we have seen success from this program. There They do report back to us in a general sense as to what they've seen every weekend. And they have been really useful in regulating, off-road vehicle use and ensuring that those vehicles are being used appropriately throughout the township. Deborah, I will ensure that you are sent their information. I do believe they have been in consult with the OPP, at least following their reports to myself over the weekends. But yes, I will ensure you get that information back to you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Madam Clerk. Is there any other new business that we have here today? Seeing none? So I guess if we know the business here today, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Peter, second by Barry. If we've no other business here today, a motion to adjourn. All in favor of the motion, show of hands. Motion is carried. We are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dwight.